talk and you can get in front of people and start telling them what they think they should hear. It's based on that question and answer, that reciprocation between two hearts of the listener and the speaker. The Maharaj is always sensitive to that, and I really appreciate that when he comes. So we came up with speaking on today about a presentation that he has, which is overcoming negative emotions. Has anyone ever felt a negative emotion?
No.
Even the members of the Harmony Collective are not immune to the negative emotions. So, Krishna says in chapter 4, text 10, it's one of my personal heart verses, that those who have given up attachment, fear, and anger are able to come to him. And one of my meditations on giving up attachment, fear, and anger is first, you have to recognize that you have it. You have to recognize that you're holding on to those things, and then only can you give it up or shed it. So I'm excited myself to hear Maharaj's discourse on this, and it'll be interactive. So get ready to get a little personal, maybe a little uncomfortable in admitting those emotions and facing them together with the guidance of Maharaj and the clear Krishna conscious perspective that he brings to everything. He's been an ardent follower of Srila Prabhupada for over 50 years, and joined in one of the first. Were you joined with the college program there in Buffalo, Maharaj, or was it through the Bhakti Yoga Society, basically?
Yeah.
The very first Bhakti Yoga Club, although it was first called, I think, just the Yoga Club, and then Srila Prabhupada said, please, I'm very happy with your efforts, but if you could change the name so they don't think we're simply bending and stretching for better sex life, that would be pleasing. So Prabhupada changed it to Bhakti Yoga Society and produced a whole swell of some of the most substantial devotees in our movement today. Ramapad Maharaj being one of them. So over 50 years he's been dedicating himself to sharing Krishna consciousness. Happy you all can be here to hear from him today. Hare Krishna.
I get some senior citizen privileges. Right here. So I don't have to ask the usual question, are there any new people here, because this is designed for new people. First, just a little sharing from my side. For the past 10 years, I've been visiting China. And people have lots of questions about, like, what's it like, and my answer is, we're not talking about it because the sensitivity's there, but it's a fantastic field. Besides the number of people, the quality of the people's interest is just building. So one of the places that I visit, the person that organizes activities there, one of the gifts that Krishna has given them is reaching people who are well-placed people in society, educated and in influential positions and so on and so on. That plus the fact that one has to be quite careful in China about everything. They arranged a workshop to connect with something that's of interest to people in China, and that's meditation. Like in America, meditation is of interest. So we had a 4-part Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, a whole day's worth of activities, but at least my part was a total of 8 hours on introducing people to meditation of different types, and what is the principle, and how is it done, and how does it work, and everything. And of course, we ended up with Hare Krishna Maha Mantra meditation. And there were a number of people that, as a result, began chanting regularly, which was really nice. And then they were saying, what's next? So since we knew that meditation was something they were interested in, we also knew that in China today, they happen to have some of the same things that we have over here, which is a rising percentage of people that have negative emotions or depression issues and so forth. So this was created for that audience, and it's relevant to the world because we're in the material world, and there's Matra Sparshasta Kaunteya Sitoshna Sukha Dukkha, that is happiness and distress. So, that news. And then how do we deal with the unhappiness because we want happiness? It's a problem. We're pleasure-seeking beings that are in a place where there's both happiness and unhappiness. So how do you navigate that territory, the material world, when you want to be happy? So a 4-part seminar was created for that. But what you're going to receive is a summary and then part 4. So if you want to know the earlier parts, I'll show you the early. Watch the screen here. Supposed to do something. There we go. So there's the 4 parts, and we're going to summarize the first part. We're going to skip the second part. The second part is it's like a japa retreat kind of message. Like, how do you do japa meditation? First is to get them ready for japa meditation. Then how do you do japa meditation? And then how you navigate your way through negative emotions. And then so look at the bottom one, because this is where we're going to do our breakout session. It's a dance. It's a break dance. Depression, anger, and anxiety. So listen to this discourse, this presentation, with the understanding that at the end you're going to be asked to join a group of one of those 3. Either you or somebody very dear to you, somebody you know and care about, has had some struggle. Doesn't even have to be, yesterday. It can be sometime along the way. A struggle with depression, a struggle with anger, or a struggle with anxiety. And the things that you're going to be hearing, there's going to be 2 questions. No surprise quiz here. The 2 questions are, thinking of that person or situation, yourself or someone. First question or topic for discussion is, of the messages that you have heard, which of these methods or tools or skills do you think is most appropriate for that which is of concern for you, and why? You got to listen carefully to part 1 and part 3. Then the second question is, going into the future as other situations arise for you or for those dear to you, what's something that you might try to develop, a skill or an approach to dealing with that topic, which is the group that you have decided you'd like to be part of? So the groups are organizing here. You're probably going to have to think of who would be the facilitator for each group to keep everybody on topic, because if you don't keep people on topic, you know what happens. You don't stay on topic. So someone has to help do that. And then somebody has to be a note-taker, reporter type person, and at the end they'll come back. So that's the train we're getting on. All aboard. Here we go. For summary, the detail of which, if you wish, Harish has it all recorded, and he'll send it to somebody who can send it to everybody that wants it, or send it to you even if you don't want it, at least the link. And then you can look at it, so you can get the detail of it. This is now just going to be a summary. The result of negative emotion is, in one word, disempowerment, or we put ourselves in a jail and we are unhappy being in jail. But as Dorothy Rose says, depression, that's one of the major negative emotions, not the only one, is a prison where you are both the suffering prisoner and cruel jailer. And this is a nice chart. The colors show much better on my screen than that one, but it's okay. This is a gentleman, a researcher, MD, that studied, I don't know exactly what, alpha wave frequencies, some brain wave frequencies or something, saying higher consciousness and lower consciousness. And through higher consciousness, that's way at the top, there's less negative emotion, more positive emotion. That's what people like. Now, just a phrase that I use in China is, because you have to, certain words you're not supposed to use. So, the place of higher consciousness. This is the place of higher consciousness. They get it. And anybody that's done meditation has the experience. We can access that place of higher consciousness. There's this fellow, I call him Dr. Joe. He's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We met on an airplane. And fast forward, he has interest in meditation. The conversation started up, and you know, I'm dressed like this, and he's dressed like he is, and he said, "Do you know something about meditation?" I said, "Sure." And then he goes, have you ever heard of such and such meditation? And I didn't get it 4 times, and you know, no, I'm sorry, I've never heard of that one. Where'd you learn about it? From Google Guru, that's where I learned about it. And I really like meditation because I don't know how to put it in words, but you know, I experience, and I said, a place of higher consciousness. He said, yeah. But I don't know how to stay there. Do you know how to stay there? It's like a little kid. It was really nice. So fast forward. Joe, I call him Dr. Joe. He doesn't know he's Dr. Joe yet, but Dr. Joe went back to University of Alabama and started a club. That turns out he is a military, whatever you call it, veteran, and now he's using his rewards for being a surviving military veteran and doing a master's degree at the University of Alabama. And he formed a club that's people that are like him, VAs, and their thing is they do meditation because they have post-traumatic stress disorder, the acronym PSDA. So, and meditation helps a lot, so they're into meditation. So I'm going there by providential arrangement on September 13th. No, September 11th. September 11th. 9/11. 9/11. So, guess what we're going to be speaking about? 9/11 and meditation. That's the topic. So, meditation takes one to a place of higher consciousness. even if you don't know Krishna, just meditation takes you to a place of higher consciousness. And so in that higher consciousness, it helps to deal with negative emotion. Researchers have demonstrated over and over again, we'll see some statistics. And so purposefully the pyramid is lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. And just a comment is towards the bottom is fear. And even lower than fear in the negative emotion category, according to this researcher, is shame and guilt. And I was a little surprised, knowing that the teaching of Bhagavad Gita at the end of Vedas is there's 4 animal propensities, and the strongest of those animal propensities is fearing. Eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, or defending. According to this study, even a darker emotion than that is shame. And little researching that I've been doing of late is Brené Brown, you can make note of it if you like, did 2 TED Talks on vulnerability, and the second one is shame. And I find her very insightful. You know, she's not a Bhakti Brené, but she has certain insights into negative emotions and positive emotions and becoming a mature and balanced adult. Some people are not. And the darkest shame that, you know, the unbalanced person, or she uses the term wholesome, and those that have holes. Those that have holes, what pulls them down is shame. And, you know, that's the dark side. So anyway, and then above that, on the brighter side, is fear. Interesting. And I also find interesting that gratitude is even above love. Anyway, I don't know how he did what he did, but that's his findings. The point here is meditation helps raise consciousness, and with this higher consciousness, it helps people deal with negative emotion. So, this is summary, and you can remember what you're going to be asked to discuss at the end. What have you heard that may be helpful for overcoming or addressing these 3 categories of negative emotions? Where do they come from? People that study this say it's like the metaphor of a computer. There's the hardware, software, and the user. So there's physical, mental, and spiritual. And of course, that's people out there in study land that study this. Their idea of spiritual and our idea of spiritual may not be a one-to-one match, but that's okay. You know, consciousness. So physical, how are those negative emotions triggered? And it's a combination of situations that are outside of us, as well as impressions that are inside of us. Now, situation outside of us, I'd like to elaborate, but I'm going to control myself a little bit, but I will elaborate a little bit. One of the books that I find is really helpful, I learned this from someone that does counseling, like psychological counseling, like therapists, devotee therapists. The one book that they recommend people that are struggling with some negative emotion is a book by Viktor Frankl, V-I-K-T-O-R, Frankl. You know the person? Man's Search for Meaning? You read it?
Holocaust survivor.
What's that?
He was a Holocaust survivor, and
Yeah.
he was a psychologist.
I'm very well aware. You're stealing my fire. Popular book. Very useful book. And it's been reprinted some number of times. And one of the reasons is it's a really skinny book. And then another reason is really pithy. It's really full of wisdom. And one of his things is, Holocaust survivor in a concentration camp with details of what that was like. And what man needs is not release from circumstances beyond his control at any cost. So we don't need release from the situations that are outside of us, that are imposed on us, and there's nothing we can do about it. We don't need to have that change, because if that's a need and it's not going to change, you got a negative emotion, it gets bigger. And whatever negative experiences and circumstances we're in, it's hard to compare to a Nazi concentration camp. And what they did each day is described in the book. So, and elsewhere. But what man needs is a mission worthy of himself or herself to fulfill. Like a life mission, something that's of meaning, and you invest in that. And when you're invested in that, I'm going to make reference to this when we get to part 3, is goals. So, a mission of your life, a purpose, a higher purpose of your life, helps you make choices in how you deal with the situation and the negative emotion that's created by the situation. That you didn't wish for that to be on the path, and there it is. And how are you going to deal with it? Negative emotions triggered by circumstances outside of us. That's one of the main sources, or a combination of that, and impressions from our past experience. We did this little exercise, which we're not going to do here, which is sit in a comfortable position and close your eyes and look at the TV screen of the mind, and something appears in the mind quickly. Just wait a while if it's not there immediately, and some image comes into the mind. And so the mind is like a television screen, and there's images on that television screen. And in many cases, the image that appears in our mind, or the picture in our mind of what's around us, doesn't really match what's around us. It's a distorted picture. And circumstances can be disproportionate from, or completely different from, external perception. So we ask them to think of a situation where you personally have not had a proper read on the circumstance that you're in. And you felt some emotion, and based on that emotion you did something, then later you realize, wow, we really didn't have the right picture of reality. But for a while you had that picture, there's some negative emotion. That's this antakarana. A little example. Supposing someone had a near-death experience in this life, or in the previous life, or they died, or someone dear to them died in a fire. And that impression is there, stored in the mind. The Sanskrit phrase is antakarana, it's not disconnected from our Vedic teaching. And then that same somebody sees a match. The parasympathetic nervous system gets triggered, and panic, and you can't reason with that person. That person can't reason with themselves. They've got a negative emotion. They've got to get out of there, etc. So the perception of reality may not be what reality is, and there's a negative emotion connected to something in the past, some past experience. And when that negative emotion starts, they those that study this, they call it the avalanche effect. It starts to snowball and get bigger and bigger, bigger and bigger, and feels like it's going to crush them, and sometimes it crushes people. And that avalanche effect is discussed in Bhagavad Gita. You're very familiar, probably, with this sequence. By contemplating the objects of the sense. What happens? One gets some attachment for that object of the sense, and you feel some emotion. Maybe it's, I got to get rid of this thing, or maybe I got to get one of these things, or I'm attached to somebody or something. And from that, if it continues to snowball, then it can become an obsession. And if that continues, it can lead to destructive action. If that negative emotion becomes really strong, one can become depressed, or one can turn to some bad habit to relieve yourself of that negative feeling, of some addiction to something. The snowball effect. So depending, there's degrees. We're seeing if 2 years ago, Ikshvaku Prabhu came to U.S. by invitation. Long story, but I heard of him, and he agreed to come, so he came. He heard his presentations are really fantastic. His field is counseling, and when he was a young man and developing his career, he lived in Australia, although he's from Peru, and he did a master's degree in something or other and worked in the field of social work and did specialization in this and that and the other thing. So he has academic and as well as practical experience and credential. And then his family grew up, so he moved to Mayapur and he established a counseling division. I'm sure they keep him busy over there in Mayapur. And then he also travels and teaches. So one of the things he teaches is like this, there's degrees. And when you, as a devotee, are called upon to help a friend, or help yourself, or something, then you need to know the degree to which this negative emotion has somebody captured. And there are different approaches depending upon how far it's gone. But, so the principles that I'm sharing are quite similar to the principles that he was sharing during his seminar. He, of course, expressed it in his own way. But these are universal principles that people in the field know. Tamahar Prabhu, some of you know who that person is, and his wife Mantrini, they both had PhDs in counseling. He was the dean of a college somewhere in Illinois in the field of counseling. He knows his stuff and he practiced it. That was his profession. That maintained his family for when his children were growing up. He looked at the curriculum of Ikshvaku Prabhu and it was like, this is good stuff. He's covering all the bases. So all this is, I'm sharing with you some very standard understandings that are in the field of people that know this subject. But it has its Bhagavad Gita connection. So just as Table Maharaj very appropriately said, one of the first things about helping to get on the other side of negative emotions is to recognize you have them. And to acknowledge them. Not, there's certain do nots. But one of the things to do is acknowledge, look at that negative emotion. To realize that negative emotion isn't you. It's just as the mind isn't you, the emotion within the mind isn't you. You're the observer of the TV screen, the mind, and you're not the mind, nor you're the emotion within the mind. may feel like it, but that's just because of that little bridge called false ego. If we identify with it, it's just a material energy, and we're the spiritual being that's within observing. Knowledge leads to detachment, jnana vairagya. It's standard Vedic understanding. So this is just putting, conventional terms into Vedic terms into conventional terms. So once you recognize that there's this negative emotion over there in your mind, you can, at least you have the option of exercising intelligence, something that you forget if you get overwhelmed by the negative emotion. And then with intelligence, we were discussing this morning, Icha, you can start making some choices. What are my options here, given from time to time, especially in corporate sectors, but not only, I'm asked to speak about stress management. It's the same, a negative emotion. Stress causes, triggers negative emotion. So it's some of the standard stuff that's taught in stress management seminars. I learned this from Rich Bihari because he did it in India. He was asked to speak on this topic. Life throws rocks at you and it hurts. That's where it starts. Then there's different responses. You have choice how you're going to respond. One of them is get angry at the person who threw the rock or something. And blaming the instrument of your karma. That's not going to make the situation better. It makes the negative emotion stronger and more reinforced. You're in prison now. But another thing is you take the rock and you toss it in the air a few times and you consider, what are my options? And then recommended by people who teach this conventionally, consider something that's meaningful to you, this Viktor Frankl message. And, it's doable, and, you do some of that. You're not denying the rock hit you and it hurt. You're not taking that negative emotion and trying to hide it or deny it or something. You're just, okay, you accept that it hit you and it hurt. Now, what are my options? So, redirect your thoughts. Use the intelligence to direct the mind. Now, sometimes the mind doesn't want to listen. Sometimes. So, but something that helps is purity. So this is a teenager created this little video, and it's meant to show through meditation one can reach a place of purity. You'll recognize the place when you see the video. Oh, Krishna. There's got to be the way to make this work. Okay, alignment of, this is a physical body, Satchidananda Swami message. Mind and heart. Alignment of body, mind, and heart. Go through those doorways, through your attaining purity efforts, and there you are, Govardhan Hill. And your consciousness, Vrindavan consciousness or Krishna consciousness gets stronger through that purity that you are able to access through meditation, because sometimes the mind is belligerent and doesn't want to cooperate. So we have this bhakti process or meditation process that can take us there to that place of higher consciousness. This is mantra meditation is being recommended to our audience in China. And there's this path of purity using really neutral language here. Elevate through sacred sound meditation. Get in touch with your soul. You can say soul sometimes. It doesn't work just by thinking about it, it's a state of being. So that's part one. Then part two is, here's how you do mantra meditation. This is, now remember, this is after this whole thing where they learned where there are other forms of meditation, and this one is especially effective. And some of them are already now chanting underneath in this audience. So now we're going to take a look at number 3. This is summary, because we're going to be going to part 4. For all of you that didn't see part 1, part 3, this is a summary. There's 4 keys, and you'll see this slide again at the end, because this is going to help you doing the breakout session work. So you got to be attentive. 4 keys: power of acceptance, power of goals, power of introspection, power of moving forward. We're going to summarize these. Power of acceptance. Here comes this negative emotion. I'm walking down the path of my life and everything seems to be going pretty normally and pretty good, and all of a sudden, whoa, something unexpected happened, and then there's this negative emotion connected to the something that happened, and how do I process this negative emotion? No, the key is acceptance. The one we're speaking about right now. Denying our emotion is unhealthy, tucking it under the rug. Maintaining resentment towards situations that aren't going to change, like being in a Nazi concentration camp, or being in the winter in Michigan, or there's certain situations just going to be what they are. You can move from Michigan. He couldn't move from the concentration camp. He's for some period of time. So, resentment towards the circumstance, the situation that's triggering that negative emotion, puts you in prison. You put yourself in prison. The circumstance didn't put you in prison because you have choices. You have freedom. You can, and that's not taken from you by the circumstance. Then another is to recognize it's part of acceptance. It's there, and it's temporary. And the image is the rising of the sun, because at night it's dark, and it can be fearful at night, but wait a while because the sun's going to rise. When I think of this, I think of being in India, where all of a sudden, all electricity goes out. You can be in an elevator. The electricity's out.
Pope was caught in the...
Huh?
Vatican Pope, he was caught in the...
Really? In India?
No, in Vatican City.
And when the electricity's out, what are you going to do? If you have your beads, you know what to do. You just chant. You're waiting for the train in India, you know what to do. Anyway, we sent the anecdotal. It's all temporary. I could share you with some nice stories. We have to move on. And look at this. Bhagavad Gita teaches us. Matra sparsha stokantiya, the verse. So I'll read the translation. Oh, son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress. Both are temporary. The happiness is also. And their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O sign of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So there's, the whole image isn't shown because of that black thing at the bottom, but there's the summer, there's the winter, wait a while, whatever it is, wait a while, it's going to change. The darkness of night, the darkness of a negative emotion, it's there for some time. It's just one of the factors of life. It's going to be there for some time. Obsessing about it isn't going to make it not dark. So, being patient isn't the only option, but it's a necessity. Because that circumstance and the negative emotion connected to it isn't going to stay with you unless you put yourself in prison. And keep it there, make it stronger and more imprisoning. Teresa, Mother Teresa. Some people come in our lives as blessings. So we discussed this, humility isn't just, okay, I'll tolerate you with a smile. You're obnoxious, dysfunctional person. I'll tolerate you. Not like that. But there's positive in the circumstances of life, even the ones that are triggering some. That's in Viktor Frankl's book. It's really, anyway. What I understand about Viktor Frankl's situation is he attributes the fact that he had this higher mission to how he got on the other side of that horrible experience. And not just the emotion, but the experience that triggered the emotion. And it was intervention of providence. So I didn't read the full book, but this is the picture I have. That each day, the guards would come, and because people are in this little corrugated tin cells, and they would jiggle the chain. It would make a lot of noise on the corrugated tin place. And people think, oh no, maybe it's me today. And then somewhere, it was somebody's day, and the lock opened, and the chain, the noisy chain made its noise, and everyone could hear. And then the person screamed, and they dragged the person to the gas chamber and gassed him. So one day was his turn, and he didn't scream. But what happened, he stayed fixed on, he had this mission. His mission was, he was a psychologist, and he was taking this experience so that when he was on the other side of the experience, he could help people who are having negative emotions due to circumstances outside of their control. And as he was being dragged to the gas chamber, some noise happened in the distance, and the guard went to attend the noise in the distance, and by the time that was attended to, the gassing part of the day was over, so he was taken back to his little box and locked up again. Is that in the book?
Oh, it's been a while.
Okay. This little, how his higher purpose, man's search for meaning, or maybe just search for meaning, man's search for meaning. Okay. So, in all of life's misfortune and the negative emotion that goes with the misfortune, there's some lessons of life to learn. Without detailing, such as da-da-da-da. But it's, the silver lining that's in every cloud, or the hand of God that's behind everything that looks like misfortune. So sometimes people feel in China and in America social pressure that seems to take away your free will options. Social pressures and social status, which form conceptions around success and failure, inhibit the ability to be open to accept our life condition and our emotions. So, success and failure, some little exercise. This group was success in modern standards, and how are we doing according to modern standards? And failure according to modern standards, and how are we doing according to failure according to modern standards? And then, so if you don't have a sense of what your mission is, then you're caught in either accepting and feeling the pressure of, or being, somebody else. I'm declaring my independence and getting crushed anyways. So, acceptance is power of acceptance. And keys number 2 is power of goals. This is a short one that is a longer version, but like a river flowing to the sea. So rivers once upon a time didn't have the same depth of the riverbed. There were some obstacles in the way, rocks and who knows what, but the river kept flowing and flowing and flowing. Gradually the rocks moved out, or they just got washed downstream, and there goes the river to the sea. So similarly, if you have goals, it's like that. Your intelligence works, and you can keep going towards your goal if it's a real, even materially, but spiritual goal, inexorable flow towards Krishna, or whatever your utterance, your personal life's mission statement is. Negative is if you don't have it, it's rough going, and small things become big things, etc. And big things become, can crush you. So what's your higher purpose, higher mission? I have lots to say about that one. However, reality doesn't always look like what your picture was. And the mission helps you stay on course, because sometimes there's highs and lows and unexpected things that happen. An image that I really like, it's very meaningful to me, this one. It's an embroidery under microscopic image. And when you look at this image, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like life sometimes really doesn't make a lot of sense, what's going on today. But if we have the big picture of what it looks like, then it makes sense. It's like really beautiful. So Krishna, especially for Krishna's devotees, there's a beautiful tapestry or embroidery or pattern of things that we don't understand as we're going through details of our life often, unless you're like a really gifted person. But most of us aren't so gifted, and it's rough going sometimes. But the bigger picture, so a goal, what's my role in the bigger picture of things? Think about this item when you go into your breakout groups, of how you can help somebody that's dear to you deal with some negative emotion. The third key is power of introspection, looking within. And looking within, the material side is control stuff. But how much can we really control? This is just a summary point. But there's lots of things we cannot control, but one thing we can control is our consciousness, or how we exercise free will, or Icha from our Bhagavad Gita value this morning. That's something we have control over. And exercise it. So that the key is introspection. And the fourth key is power of moving forward. So something that helps us move forward is association with people who are moving forward. Very, very helpful. And another is, this is exactly something that Ikshvaka was sharing with us, how to, as devotees, we're sometimes called upon to be a friend of somebody that's going through a negative emotion. Or in his case, more officially, like a counselor. And so he was teaching us some counselor skills. And when somebody's like down, and they're, you say anything, and they're so down, it's down. They're stuck. they're trapped, they're bad, they're worthless, it's like hopeless, they're throwing in the towel, they're like looking over the edge of a cliff or something, down. And you have to coach them off the edge of the cliff sometimes, or not necessarily that extreme, but out of how to come out of a negative emotion where it's got them caught. They are the prisoners in their own negative emotion. So this is one of those messages. Invite that person to think of when were times not like this. What did it feel like? What were some of the things that you did when you were feeling this better space? And what are the things that you think that you could do today that was part of what was like that when you're having that good space experience? Or what are the gifts that Krishna has given you, and what are some ways that you could exercise that gift that Krishna has given you? Like, you're not fixing their problem, you're just turning their attention away from the negative emotion and the circumstance that's out of their control to themselves and their power to make choices. And encourage, hey, that sounds great. You think you can do that? I'm glad to support. What way can I support to help you to do that? That's, you don't have to do it. Don't try to fix their problem or, lift them up and be the carrier of their problem, of their emotion. But, be a support. This is the counseling message. Or individually, you're feeling down and circumstances really like yucky. And what are you going to do? Take the rock, throw it in the air sometimes. What are my options? So something that I can do that's me. It's not what that circumstance is that's outside of me, but what's me, and what can I do that's me? And do some of that. Doable and sustainable, and then celebrate. Then, okay, great, what else? Little steps, step by step. It strengthens trust in oneself and trust in others to make those little steps. Incremental steps, doing something that's positive for yourself, incremental steps in applying mantra meditation in your life. Don't make promises to improve what you can't keep. It will only exacerbate feelings of failure. So that's key number 4. So now we're ready for today's discussion. And that's number 4. Taking these 3 out of the treasure box of many negative emotions. Depression, anger, and anxiety, because they're very prevalent. What are some things that I or we can do to help address my or someone dear to me negative emotion? So there are causes, some fundamental causes of anxiety. This is a summary. There's a really long presentation that I'm not going to do, assuming. But misalignment between outer reality and our expectations. The outer reality shouldn't be like that. It should be like this. But the outer reality doesn't match our expectations. So it gives us some anxiety. So something that I often say to people is just, if your expectations don't match reality, you're setting yourself up for frustration or anxiety. So better to calibrate your expectations to match reality for yourself and the interpersonal dealings with others. Don't have an unrealistic set of expectations. Please, do yourself a favor. But a cause of anxiety is they don't match, or misalignment between inner expectations, that is, antakarana, or as impressions within our mind, and who we really are. These are who we really are is the soul, and expectations that don't match who we really are. That's another anxiety. It's the recipe for failure, and whether, to a degree that it's conscious or not, it's a recipe for failure. It puts us in anxiety. We're putting ourselves in anxiety. These are fundamental causes of anxiety. Then another is, in Prabhupada's words from Ishopanishad, all forms of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. Or in short, read Prabhupada's books regularly. And then you'll be more, at least equipped to have knowledge, more complete knowledge of the complete whole, and your place with that complete whole. Because you are also part of the complete whole, which means you are complete in yourself. So that feeling of incompleteness can be realigned. You're already a whole entity, part of the supreme whole. And hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Holy Name, simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic sound, singular, the feeling for loving devotional service to the Supreme sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So that's like, those that designed this presentation of anger, anxiety, depression, there's like an hour plus presentation for each one of those. We just did it in like 12 minutes. So there's a longer version, we just did a mini version. But it should equip you for our final exercise, which Deva Madhava is going to facilitate. These are which you can. There's two main slides. It's the one on the right. Who's the next? That was to wake you up. You're all awake now.
To incite any feelings of anxiety. If anybody was looking for it.
Broken eardrums.
So I'm going to induce everyone to join up in groups.
Yeah, and then the whole thing. If it's missing, I'll fill in. Go ahead.
I think most of it's going to be missing because I wasn't. So when I looked through the slide, I wasn't sure exactly what my role is going to be.
Okay, I can do it.
That'd be, yeah.
I'll do it.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to go from professor to facilitator. This is the fun part, or something that's meant to take information and make it practical, bring it inside. And, if you do that, then it brings transformation. But let's see, let's just go for practical application. So, of the treasure box of negative emotions, there are three that are very prevalent in modern society, and we'd like each of you to identify which of these three groups you'd like to participate in. It doesn't mean like you're having a bout of depression if you go there, but it's something that's in the world and you'd like to understand more about it from the association of others, and so you can be of some resource to help people that are going through that thing, or yourself, both, either or. And same with the other ones, depression, anger, anxiety, anger. So, three groups, and someone is the facilitator that make sure the group stays on topic. The topic's the next slide. So the facilitator in each group, and Dave Amato is going to tell you where the groups are going to go. Okay. And then someone's a note taker, and your service is to kind of gather the essence of what the group says. You don't have to like, this one said this and that one said that. It's a discussion just reporting back to the larger group. These are some of the main points. There seems to be some, energy surrounding some of these main points. And then, so here's the exercise. You can take your phone and take a picture of it. So when you're sitting in a group, you can take a look at it. So you know what your exercise is. Something that you or someone dear to you has been through that sticks in your mind is something that is a situation where a little bout of anger, anxiousness, or depression was going on, and then thinking of that specific situation, 2 questions. From the methods we have learned today, which method or methods you feel most suitable for you? Not what other people should do, but something that you can personally take assistance from to help address that negative emotion that your group is discussing. And if you can share why you think this particular method or approach would be helpful for you or the person that's dear to you. Now we'll show you the slide with the 4 keys so you can take a picture of the 4 keys, and your facilitator is going to keep everybody mindful of what the topic is. The next is, next week, next month, tomorrow, going into the future. What are some of the things, skills or approaches that you think you'd like to learn more about or develop a skill for or become more proficient in so you can help yourself or others address one of those negative emotions, or the one that your group is speaking about? Any questions on the discussion topics and how we're going to go about all this? Okay, I'm going to go back to the slide that shows the 4 keys. Not that you've got a perfect memory about everything, but it's just a frame of reference. When I'm looking for that 4 keys slide, you can say what the
Yes.
groups will be.
Please raise your hand if you plan on being in the anger group. Okay. So I'm looking up a group. I'm going to ask you to be the facilitator in the anger group. And Brittany, if you could be the note taker of the anger group. We'll have you guys go upstairs. We'll separate the anger version. So if you're going to be in the anger group, you'll have your own contained space in front of the holy name to keep everything. And somebody, if you'd like to stay downstairs, just to snap a pic of Maharaj's the 4 keys. When anybody would like. So the anger group's going to be upstairs, and the other 2 groups will split here downstairs. Here's the 4 keys. If somebody who's in the anger group would like to take a pic of that. Who's going to be in the anxiety group? Okay. Mother Matida. Yeah. If you could be the note taker.
That's getting her anxiety.
Sensitive group. Would you be the note taker? Okay, thank you. And then can I see the other anxiety hands? Would you be the facilitator? Great. Okay, so Mother Madhavi is going to be your facilitator for the anxiety group. We're going to have you guys on that half of the room. And then raise your hand, the depression group, the rest of us. Okay. Siddhari Prabhu will be the facilitator. And so you'll be the new independent. The depression group will be on this side. Yeah.
I think we are all here. I supposed to they come very close to me and almost fight. Yeah, almost fight. And that kind of
I was thinking about my mother because
I used to see her. I was
how we life before life. So last couple of years her health has been really terrible. And she's not able to move as well as she was able to before. And in my recent conversations we have been discussing that, you know, previously her job, she's recently retired. And she's mentioning that how she's looking for some goal. Maharaj talked about it. Then I realized that that's not yeah.
well, I don't know. I mean, like, she's not, she's very often. She's looking for something she can do with her. Yes, even if I see pets before, my attention in the room would be on the pet. So I'm like cautious.
So based on, I think what we were trying to get to is based on like this year's
Prabhuji, doesn't matter.
Traveled some more. So we want to make sure you get something Everyone please quickly sit in a listening space. Don't dawdle. Just everybody sit back where you were or where it makes sense. Let's be respectful of our We're going to share it now.
Let's hear from the anxiety group first.
Then I wasn't able to stop or start.
I think the anger group next.
So basically, this is the anxiety group, and we had a few situations discussed today. So there's this one situation, anxiety from stray dogs barking. So we discussed that having that kind of experience at a young age could cause like traumatic feelings when a person grows, and so we discussed how we could avoid it. So there were like some thoughts like power of acceptance, accept the feeling of being scared. Then there was a suggestion that next thing could be avoid seeing the dog in the eye. Have like a clear goal, basically to, and basically that the dog that was stray is not the same dog. This could be a different dog. So have clarity that where you stand. Have a kind of introspection. And then try to be friends, maybe moving forward. Then this is another situation when we don't know, like there are some specific people or persons which we might feel afraid of meeting, like for example cops. Whenever we hear about cops, it's something wrong, something bad, or like something has happened. We don't want to go to them. So even something simple like asking direction, going to cop could cause some anxiety. So we could like accept that we are feeling anxious because we have this past experiences which link up not so well. So and then we can distinguish the reality that and our present, that I have not done anything wrong and cops are for help, so we can reach out to them and we can ask. It's okay to feel a little anxious. Then there was this one another situation which is probably very common. In spiritual life, doing too many services can sometimes overwhelm us, and could also cause shame and guilt when we are not able to meet the expectations set by self. And acceptance of non-real expectations could be a thing that one could do. We need to understand that what's practical and what's not. So that's the acceptance, and then we can introspect what can be done. The quantity doesn't matter always, the quality does, and we can avoid having too many commitments so that we lower our expectations and the anxiety. And then moving forward, we could also devote some time to doing some other activities like Prabhu mentioned, going to badminton or gym or something else.
Keep going, don't look at me.
Okay. Then,
He has a need for approval.
then another one is anxiety of of multiple things. People, we want to have spiritual goals. We want to excel in career, studies. So there's like a whole lot of problems we have at hand, and we want to solve them. But then we can start moving forward by accepting that there are too many problems to resolve at hand, and all of them couldn't be solved in a single day. So we need to establish, now this is the goal part, we could establish goals with a timeline, and we could also have something called time management, long set of times. And then moving forward, we could have like a tracker where we track our goals and how it's going. So that's like moving forward. And then this is the last one.
Are you a project manager? Yes?
No.
No? Okay, I'm just...
You will be. Yeah. Well, I'm also feeling a little anxious.
You're well organized. You're doing great. Keep going, finish up too.
Test. So we often, there's times we go to hospital, for our physical examination, and then we have this mental thing of what would come in the result. The environment of the hospital itself kind of gives us some different feeling. So acceptance of the situation that I'm feeling a little anxious because of the environment is something, one thing one could do. And then other thing could be try to be in the moment and try to do the little things, which could also be filling out the form attentively. I think that's it.
If you were in anxiety about having to be the reporter, don't blame somebody else. He appointed you, but he's not the boss.
I don't mind, I do it all the time.
You did great. So, our group upstairs, who's the reporter?
I'm the reporter.
You don't look angry at all.
No, actually. I tend not to, but
So one thing we've been discussing were situations either us personally or people near us, like episodes of anger, and how those situations then affect us as well. So we've gone through various different types of situations.
Could you just step back because of this Prabhu that's your feet is only getting stepped on.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
He's a small guy. Small guys. Go ahead.
And we try to take some of the points of the presentation and try to analyze these situations and how they are connected to the situation we've been experiencing. So very important was this aspect of the avalanche effect, where people get stuck in a situation, and then that keeps on growing, and increasing and affecting also those who are nearby. And another important aspect that we discussed was the fact that the four keys were actually, you can see them, how they are connected among one another.
Yes.
So one takes to the other. And a common understanding when looking at this situation was that, first of all, it's important that we accept ourselves and the situation. So that's often the case, whether it was us or the people near us, like they have difficulty accepting themselves, so they're not doing what they think they could do or they should do, or they're not accepting the situation how it is. And that was a shared thing. So, and that's very connected with the power of goals, so realizing to even reset the expectation, move their expectation, match them to closest to the reality of the situation of ourselves. So that's that was a very important point that came out, and realizing that no one is perfect, and we need to be a little bit compassionate toward ourselves and to others. And in this case also it was important, we've seen how the association with devotees has helped many of us in that regard. So we can see things in more in a proper perspective, and we can let go. For those who have the anger can learn to let go and then move forward. And this aspect of understanding ourselves is related, of course, to the power of introspection. So forgiving ourselves and also understanding our position in relation to the situation, it has been very important for many of these cases. And trying to understand the bigger picture. Another interesting point that came out is try to understand why anger is triggered. So what is the actual cause of anger? So there are so many thoughts that go in the mind, and we can lose focus, so we're just angry, and why are we really angry? So trying to isolate that the real root cause of that, so that type of introspection. So once you can focus on that, and you can kind of see it from a better perspective and move away from it. And then this also brings power of moving forward. And a very nice point that came up was that sometimes this situation that can be very hard and very upsetting, very making us angry, can actually be turned and spin in a way that actually come to our benefit. And the prayers of Queen Kunti came up in the sense that the situation might have made us very angry, very upset and things, but maybe that triggered us so that we started doing something else. And one specific case is a devotee who was very upset at the person who she felt had betrayed her. But that situation made things so that she started visiting the temple regularly every day and associating with devotees. So how to move away from the situation and move forward. And again, the devotees have this thing. This is pretty much the topics we've discussed. And
does anybody from the group want to add something to either of these presentations? That's one of the prompts I'm supposed to ask. Anybody in that group would like to add something that you felt was kind of an essence that you shared? Or if not, from the prior group, anything you'd like to add? Yeah.
I mean, if it definitely goes unchecked, it leads to like bigger problems.
Say it again?
If it goes unchecked and repeatedly happens,
Yeah.
the anxiety or anger.
The avalanche effect.
Yeah.
Starts. Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Okay, great. Fantastic. nice to get your accent Okay, so our third group.
We have depression. So there's an instance where there's a mother. It's hard to see without backing on it. Her health was bad, and she had recently retired, and she had limited movement. And her son was helping her fixate her goals to stay focused, and reading Bhagavad Gita with her so it could ease her depression and anxiety. And he could tell that by reading the Bhagavad Gita with her that it was helping her depression, anxiety, and helping her maintain those goals. And then another devotee had said maybe, you know, if she was like having exercise if I could help her, and, you know, with her limited mobility, and gave some constructive ideas of how to help. Another one was someone else, and they fell into a depression because they had stopped chanting and they fell into Maya, and he didn't like that feeling, and he had the realization that it was his choice to break through that he had to push forward and make that decision of, okay, I need to chant my rounds and get out of this. And in that, also having shelter with Krishna in that liminal space of where you are and where you go, and that Krishna's in that space. Another devotee was very depressed, and this person knew this devotee, and he was very suicidal and not feeling well, and something that helped him was his sadhana, which he just woke up at a certain time in the morning, and that really helped him to ease his depression.
Look at the audience out here, not just me.
Okay. Another person had a realization that they had some illnesses, and they were stuck in that mode of not feeling well, and pity, and Maya, watching TV and eating junk food, and it feels awkward to say it's me, I'm that devotee. And I shared that I was struggling with a bout of depression recently because of finding out some medical things, and then realizing that, okay, everything kind of sucks right now, so I ate junk food and laid in my bed, and that was it, and watched really bad TV. And then I had, through association and reading Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and chanting my rounds, I was able to pull myself out of that. Another devotee saw a person who had or knew of a person who had a stroke, and it depressed this person. And then they themselves became obsessed with the fear of dying. And in turn, this person turned that forward into becoming goal-oriented and having proper association. And in the future, wants to work on accepting that this is a negative and temporary emotion and keep moving forward. And then there was just some side tangents that we had. The self of acceptance and moving forward. Having goals helps move forward, and keeping realistic goals. And unrealistic goals equal more depression, and realistic goals less depression, so be easy on yourself. Realizing that we have something, and something is good, and just focus on that. And that it is an illness, and it is a sickness. So that's the realization of having that first step. If I do have it, or someone else has it, the main goal is to be happy, and how that ties into being realistic and how to get there. And one of those is not being so self-critical, and introspections, and reading Srila Prabhupada's books really helps, and it opens the heart to feel. Srimad Bhagavatam links the past to now and how to face the now and the past. People's compassion are worn away by the conditioning. Negative emotion doesn't serve, and it's a kind of a source of identity, and materially is easier to identify with. And we would rather be depressed than not exist.
Whoa. Sounds positive.
Feelings are good because God made feelings, and it can be an opportunity or a driving force to face our lives and move forward.
That's deep,
A couple of points in the back. You have to keep the body moving. When your body is stagnant, that's when the depression gets bad. And having small goals helps. And handle things as they come. So instead of seeing the whole big picture, take one chunk at a time and handle it as it comes. Don't think into the future, oh, this thing's gonna happen, I'm gonna freak out about it. Wait for it to come and then handle, do some premeditative things, do your rounds, read Bhagavatam, prepare yourself for things, but don't lament about things that haven't happened yet. Accepting that this is a negative and temporary emotion. Just keep moving forward. That's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, one of the things that's important as devotees, well, there's several things, but one of the things that's important is, as devotees is application. So, give some thought to what you have heard, the information that you've received, and give thought to how you can practically apply. It may be helpful to go to the part 1, part 3, where it's more fully described, and take a look at it again at some point down the road. It's easy to say that and then get too busy to do anything. So, but to move forward with overcoming negative emotions, what's the goal? We want to get closer to Krishna, and that's an obstacle to getting closer to Krishna. So be clear that spiritual goal, and then it gives more impetus to take the resources that will help you achieve that which is really important to you. And your sense of its importance becomes stronger as you move closer to that goal. This higher consciousness feeds higher consciousness, and just as the avalanche effect of negative emotion feeds more negative emotion. Application is the thought I wanted to share. You want to say any concluding sound vibration? Okay. So I have some Mahaprasadam here.
I will thank Maharaj for coming, and I heard once Bhakti Siddhanta, who's Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, said association with neophytes is excruciating. And so when I see someone like Maharaj, who really could just sit and chant and hear about Krishna all day long, sit patiently with so many people across the planet and kind of hold our hands through these mundane places, knowing that by doing that himself he'll be able to attract us to Krishna. It's very touching to see and to be a part of. So thank you, Maharaj, for your patience, your encouragement, your kindness. And tomorrow morning, Maharaj will give a class again at Rasamrita Prabhu's home. And then tomorrow night is in Troy.
No, White Pines.
Okay, so it's in the newsletter that Uma sends out if anybody would like to attend that program. And then I think Thursday morning is the last class.
No, in the car, on the way to the next place.
Okay, got it. So